I've enjoyed the conversation and listening. Having grown up in Ohio and in a farming community and watching the industry over the years and how innovation, technology, and globalization, all these things have affected it. I started to do a little math, having a little fun here with my AI partner as I was going through the economics of a family farm and reflecting on the estate tax debate that always goes on around farms. And I was thinking about a large family farm, 3,000 acres, row crops, wheat, corn, soybeans. I did the math on this at $10,000 an acre. That's a $30 million asset. But once you factor in average input costs and average yields and average net or price for what people would be yielding in those crops over this past 3 years, the estimate of the net profit would be $81,153 a year, which is great. It's a profit, but not much of one when you consider all the risk that's involved in that. But if you would have taken that same amount of value and invested in the S&P 500 this past year, it would have netted you $4.9 million and you could have sat home the whole time. So I guess I'm not making a case for farming, economically speaking, with that assessment, but I'm just trying to talk about how important it is that we have people who are willing to do this in our country to feed America and people around the world who don't have the ability to grow this kind of food, and how important the estate tax exemptions that we put in the bill and the Working Families Tax Cut Plan this year really were for that very example that I used. Because the tax bill for that, were it not there, and you wanted to pass it on to the next generation, would have been $12 million. And $12 million at an average net profit of $81,000 a year, it would take you 147 years to pay that tax bill. And so when we make policies here with family farms in mind, and we hear the rhetoric around the estate tax, it's just economics. People won't stay in the family farming business if they can't afford it. If they get charged a tax bill that they could never pay. And so, Ms. Spurgeon, I appreciate you being here, and I'm glad that you brought my friend Adam along with you as former Secretary of State. And but does that sound like the kind of people that are the customers in your bank and the kind of issues that they contemplate when they're making financial decisions?
Absolutely. And it's unfortunate that the piece that is considered when a family farm is going to transition is to sell the farm, and that's unfortunate.
And does what we did in the bill to help exempt them from that tax bill save family farms?
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad to know that because I think it's a virtuous goal, and I'm glad that we were able to get that accomplished and sort of make the at least give a chance for the economics of this to work. You talked about in your testimony compliance burdens. Could you talk a little bit more about that as it relates to how you, give us a flavor, if you could, about that farmer, about that family farm. They come to you and they're looking for financing. Explain what that compliance burden means.
Yeah, so, at the very basic level, a lot of the requirements just on the at the very beginning in the application side, when you're talking about business plans, financial statements, projections, and especially for either young borrowers or even new entrepreneurs into a new business, that's really where we see the struggle is just having, they're all trying to do their work on a day-to-day basis, but then to have this additional burden of, not opposed to providing projections or providing any of that. It's the level of compliance that's required and the constant, what seems to be a constant back and forth between the application portal and getting with the customer and having them be able to set aside the time that's required to put this together. So that's what we see from the front end. Also, compliance issues related just simply around once an SBA loan is done, around the guarantee, where we have lived. Unfortunately, not all businesses remain as ongoing entities and have lived working through with SBA on the guarantee, and it is not an easy process. Something that you do at the very beginning that says you have a guarantee, and 5 years later, you unfortunately have to go back on that guarantee with SBA, and it is a very cumbersome process. Unfortunately, the lender that did the loan that we did 5 years ago, I asked him, I said, have you ever talked to anyone about an SBA loan? And he goes, I will never do one again. And it was a good business. It was a purchase. It wasn't even a startup. But again, just the time that it took to close the loan, 6 months. And the unfortunate side is the sellers of existing businesses, they've got to be willing to stay hooked with that buyer to be able to work through that time frame and that process. So thank you for the question.
Great, thank you.